Hello, hello, hello. I'm Backner. I'm the producer of Metaverse Fashion Week 2025. It's an absolute joy to welcome you back again to our series of live panels that we're streaming out over the next 4 days, hopefully to give you some really great insights into the future of fashion and what's happening right now in terms of our theme this year, which is infinite identities. This was one of my favorite panels to put together. We're going to be looking and exploring at virtual identities, how avatars are shaping self-perception and self-expression. So with me, I have three incredible guests from different areas of this topic who are going to be talking about their experience, sharing some advice, diving into this really important emerging topic. Before we do that, I would like to welcome you all that are listening across socials, whether you're in LinkedIn, YouTube, or across X. If you are in World already, well done. You've jumped into one of the most immersive festivals right now in virtual worlds. There are 26 different wearables to collect if you want to start customizing your avatar in World. There is live talks to watch. There are runways to be part of. The next talk after this one is actually a very special announcement of the award winners of the Banners We Wear competition, the student competition to win 10,000 USD in mana to create avatars that actually tap into this, that express protest, self-expression, and identity. So keep with us. We're going to have an amazing next 3 hours. First this panel, then the Banners We Wear runway show and awards announcement, and then our opening party. So welcome to Metaverse Fashion Week 2025. Virtual identities. For the next hour, we're going to be talking with some expert voices. So I have with me Camilla, Kai, and Blake from different areas of the industry, and I would like them to introduce themselves and talk about what their connection is right now to digital fashion. Kai, would you like to start us off?
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, thanks for having me here. Pleasure to be sharing the roundtable with you all, and also participating in the Metaverse Fashion Week. On my side, well, I'm Kai. I'm the CEO and co-founder at Union Avatars. Basically, what we do is we created a software to create 3D avatars from 2D selfie pictures using different styles. We have a more realistic or more cartoonish, and we are releasing now a pixel-like or voxel-like avatar style. Our approach is that just like in real life, you should be able to keep your identity, but then project it in a different way based on the platform that you are joining. Just like in real life, you dress differently when you go to the gym or to the office or when you meet with friends. So that's a little bit our approach on identities, avatars, and self-expression.
And can you tell me what we're seeing right now in World?
Yeah, in fact, in this specific showroom, what we did is a collaboration with 10K. 10KA is a shoes brand that we partner with, and we did some collaborations already. Basically, what we're showing is two different assets here. One is our puffer, is one of the creations that we did in-house because we also do our own designs. And the other one that you can see on the right side, maybe I'm going too fast, sorry about that, is the shoes that 10K is promoting. What they did is that they have been working for quite a long time on real physical shoes, and what they are doing now is connecting on phygital, let's say, so connecting the physical good with the digital good through an NFT. This is the central version, but they have other versions. And then basically you can come to our website, to Union Avatars, and you can dress your avatar with the different assets that they provide. Or you can go to the central and also claim the shoes.
So Dana's showing them now in our backpacks. So you can see that Dana's avatar right now is modeling the shoes by Tinka, and also the Union Avatars puffer jacket. So if you're new to this, you'll see that Union Avatars and Tinka are one of the 16 showrooms in Metaverse Fashion Week. You can enter the showroom just as Dana's avatar is doing on the screen here and collect the two wearables that Kai has created in collaboration with Diana at Tinka. Anything else we should know about this wearable showroom before we move on, Kai?
No, I think we are not missing nothing. I mean, you have linked to our social, so please follow us and stay up to date with everything that we are doing. And just make sure that you claim the assets. Hopefully, we sold out soon.
Well, we're going to be talking much more about your experience in the next hour. Camilla, And you tell me and our viewers who you are and what's your connection to digital fashion.
So, hi, thank you for having me. It's exciting to be here and amazing. Thanks again for an invitation. So, I come from the digital fashion space. I'm not currently in the digital fashion. I used to work for Genies. That is a digital identity avatar company based in LA. We used to create this avatars, especially for celebrities, to explore how they can leverage their digital identities when they don't have to be physically present in everywhere. And right now I'm working more on the avatar side of it, meaning like 3D representation of people. And right now with Kaya, we're exploring different ways in how basically how emerging technologies can impact people's lives in a positive way. And avatars can definitely have a positive impact on people's life and people's mental health. So I'm exploring that side. So it's not strictly related to fashion, but it's more like avatars in as a broader term.
And when we first spoke, Camilla, you told me about an incredible project that you just started research on. Can you tell me a little bit about that area?
Absolutely. So the project is actually from last year. We did this research project last year with psychologists and psychiatrists, scientists, and we explored how avatars, again intended as 3D representation of a person, can have significant impact on people's mental health. And we specifically saw some incredible positive results on people with eating disorders. And I hope this is not triggering in any way, because I know this conversation can be triggering for some people. So I'm going to try to be as delicate and respectful as possible. But basically what we observed is that when a person sees themselves as an avatar, so not through the mirror and not in any other way in real life, they are able to make the body dysmorphia better. So a lot of people with eating disorders, especially we saw people with anorexia nervosa, have this body dysmorphia. So they see themselves as different, and their inner critic in their head is very strong and very predominant in their head. And whenever they see themselves as avatars versus as an image reflected in the mirror, this body dysmorphia improves significantly, meaning that they see themselves as how they actually are, and they're able to be kinder and more gentle with themselves and with their self-perception. And so a lot of them were able to actually improve significantly in terms of starting to eat again, literally, because they were able to see the harm that they were doing to themselves. And so right now, that was just like research for now. Now we want to bring it to life because we see how that can impact so many people's lives. And we're starting that project and trying to make it an actual product that people can use.
This is fascinating. I think we're going to dive into this so much more in terms of self-perception. Blake, I'd like to bring you in here to sort of say, what is your background and what's your connection to avatars and fashion?
Of course. And first of all, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here at Metaverse Fashion Week and pleasure to be in the Central Net once again. And of course, very excited for the conversation with my fellow panelists. See some familiar faces, and I also see some new faces that I intend to befriend because I think we're going to have a great conversation. A bit about me. I'm the head of advisory at Outlier Ventures. We are probably the biggest investor in the Web3 space and the biggest venture ecosystem. We have a portfolio of close to 400 teams now, including actually Kai and Union avatars. And I've had the pleasure and the honor to run all of the editions of the Farfetch Dream Assembly program. Pretty much the first accelerator fully focused on using emerging technology in fashion and digital luxury. I'm also an advisor to many startups in the space, from digital fashion to luxury technology to IP protection to Digital Fashion Week. And I really think this is an amazing space, which is all about unrestrained identity, self-expression. And I think this is what brings us here to this discussion. So I'm super excited to dive in.
I love that we have the whole breadth. So from avatar creation to research into avatar impact to the funding and the investment behind so many of the growth companies in the Web3 space. So thank you so much for all three of you for joining us for this discussion. And I'm kind of want to kick off with a kind of a general conversation starter, which is about how we perceive ourselves. And in your experience in virtual worlds, your experience as an avatar yourself, how have you seen that change in self-perception? How has it affected you or someone that you've seen within the space in terms of how you perceive yourself in both realities, in our physical world and also our virtual? Kai, can I get you to dive in on this one?
Yeah, sure. I mean, well, I'm talking really from my personal point of view, so I think it might be different, no? But at the end of the day, each person choose an avatar to work with or to be their virtual identity. And then it really can be related to a lot of different things. There is some people, from my experience, there is some people who prefer to have an avatar that looks like them, something that is totally different, an avatar that maybe is from NFT community, so it's just like representing more a community or a new individual inside one specific community. I think on what I move, or at least the people that I have around or more close to me, most of the people like to have some sort of semi-privacy, if that makes sense. So having one avatar that they can use as an identity in a recurrent way and repeat with this identity, but maybe not directly link it to the real identity, because that can have maybe just like a preference or for whatever, like their situation or whatever reason can be, but there is a certain degree of anonymity in using avatars depending how you want to use it, but at the same time it's super custom and super personal, so you can have something that is really 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 personal, but at the same time it's not directly attached to your identity. I'm not sure if that answers your question, but
It does. How does that, I like the word semi-privacy, like how does that manifest for you? Like when you're in world, like how do you consider that aspect of relating with your avatar?
for me, something that we kind of recover maybe with the 3D worlds or gaming, but I think specifically on the 3D worlds is, I don't know, back in the days, if you were used to using IRC, like internet relay chat or some sort of chat, people used to have nicknames, and maybe like you could talk to somebody, get to know a lot this person, but you might not know the real name of this person, no? So there was a certain degree of privacy or anonymity tied to it. Then we kind of lost it with Facebook, Instagram, all these things. And I feel with the 3D worlds and the avatars, we are kind of recovering this. So you can have a persistent identity that you can use over the time, but at the same time, maybe not have a full disclosure on your personal information.
I think that's really interesting. It's something that I've seen in terms of production as well, that a lot of people I work with, I know them as their avatar identities. Like I
Exactly.
really don't know, in a lot of cases, gender, geography, age, and it changes the way that you relate. Like you know someone as their avatar name and their avatar, and there is that sense of privacy there, but you genuinely have a connection with the people that you're working with. You have that human connection, even with this constructed self that's being used in world. Blake, for
But
you, this question of anonymity, privacy, is it something that you consider in terms of avatars?
Yes, indeed. In many ways, the principle of zero knowledge from crypto comes to aid to answer that question, because in many ways you can authenticate the person behind the avatar, knowing this is the real person without actually knowing their identity, having them remain undoxed, so to say. But if I may, in terms of self-perception, I think Camilla touched on a really interesting point. What is the definition of the avatar we're applying? Because I think that might also be different depending on the generation of the person we talk to. So just thinking out loud for a second, I think avatars have been around for quite some time. And Kai and Union avatars are an amazing innovation, but it's also the latest iteration of that technology. I would actually go as far as to also include both holographic 3D representations of people as well as actually social media profiles or social media personas into our definition of the avatar. So from the perspective of self-perception, I think, for example, for older generation, my mom is her super authentic self on social media. There is no image or separation between the real person and the avatar there. But me, I'm a millennial. I still remember the moment when you were collecting your friends onto the platform where then you would cultivate an image as an avatar. But I still recall there was a moment when I had more friends in real world than I had friends online. Nowadays, in later generations, you kind of grow up with people online in a larger quantity before you actually go out to meet people in person. Your online circle can be larger, and you also don't have that point of reference of pre-social media times. So I think for each one of those generations, that is very different. Younger generations care more about how their avatar looks like, not only on social media, but also in virtual environments, more than they care how they look like on their way to the local bodega. And I think the influence on perception of ourselves through our avatar and others goes both ways. People often associate us with our digital expression, even though it might not be a one-to-one representation. And sometimes the digital expression starts having influence on us. This influence can be positive. I really like Camilla's example, but that influence can also turn negative. Many of you, I'm sure, have heard about the concept of audience capture, where essentially the online persona of an influencer or a content creator is the amplified, maybe even a bit of a caricature of themselves. But because this version gets the most engagement, the person is slowly turning themselves and their own definition of their identity more towards the direction of that digital representation. Or if somebody uses a lot of Facetune, there might be a moment when they think that's how they look like. So this influence goes both ways, and it can be both positive and negative. And it's also a very different approach based on the age group that is using the technology.
Camilla, kind of calling you in here for the work that you've been doing. How does that fit with the perception that Blake has about this interplay between identities?
I completely agree with Blake, and I think it is so important to recognize the psychological effects that 3D and digital identities have on us. Because it's true, it's a double-edged sword. It can be positive and it can be negative. But, you know, I always try to see the positive thing, because I feel like there's already so much negative connotation around like emerging technologies. I'm talking specifically about the environment that I'm immersed in. I'm in Italy right now, and I see this as very different from the Silicon Valley where I used to live a few years ago. So it's completely two different perceptions about technology. So here I see that people are very skeptical and they don't trust technologies that they don't fully understand. So my mission here, right now here, but actually in general, is to make people understand what technology can do for us as humans. And I think that digital identities and avatars specifically can really enhance our self-perception. Because, for example, when you look at eating disorders and in general mental health condition that have something to do with the perception of ourselves and of our body, the work that you do with your own avatar as your own 3D representation can significantly help you improve your self-perception. Because basically what you can do is you can put your avatar in a situation, almost like a simulated scenario. You can make it go to a meeting or go to a restaurant or go to the beach or whatever, like situations that might be stressful for you in real life. But if you see your own 3D representation doing those things, you can observe the simulation from a safe distance and say, oh, that's actually not that bad. Like my avatar didn't die, so I might be good as well doing those things. And, you know, that has a lot of repercussions. There's this very interesting psychological effect. It's called Proteus effect. And basically, whatever you do to your avatar, like if your avatar speaks confidently, if your avatar is bold and is able to be his authentic self, and is going to meeting and speaking up for himself and doing all these things, if you're able to see yourself as that avatar, so that avatar is your digital representation, the impact on your self-perception in your conscious and subconscious mind is going to be so incredible that people are actually going to experience these positive effects in their own life. Because they're like, if my avatar, who is my self identity in the digital world, did that, I can do that too. And I think that that's so interesting, because it is true, it can have a lot of negative impacts on our life and our mental health, and we need to be aware of that. But I also think that we need to be focusing on the positive, like enhancing the positive effects that can have on all of us, even if we don't have any pathology, a mental health disorder in general. I think everyone could definitely benefit from an increased self-perception.
That's fascinating. So this Proteus effect of us seeing our avatar in situations that perhaps we'd be reluctant to do in real life actually changes our self-perception and allows us to approach those scenarios with more confidence and more ability.
Yeah, it's almost like an extremely enhanced visualization exercise. I don't know if you're into visualization exercises, like mentally visualizing yourself doing something so that you can rehearse in your mind. But like when you have to close your eyes and imagine that thing is one thing. When you see your avatar with your own eyes and experience that thing in a virtual reality, that changes completely. It's like visualization on steroids.
It's fascinating. Kai, I'm going to ask you in a second how this is affecting your work and your strategy at Union. Before I do, I want to kind of push everyone that's watching us on socials. We've got people watching across LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter right now, X. If you've never been in Decentraland before, this is a really good time to start exploring virtual worlds and experiencing some of these dynamics between yourself and a virtual avatar. Head to Metaverse Fashion Week, which is mvfw.org. You will see there the whole program for Metaverse Fashion Week itself and some jump-in links. You just need to hit the link. It will download the software. And then you can join us in World right now. As you can see, we're having a party, we're streaming across the socials, and we can also explore all these avatars in World itself. If you're fascinated about some of the looks and the wearables you see in World, click on the people you see and you can enter their wardrobe, you can see what they're wearing, you can buy the same clothes or trade them in the marketplace at Decentraland. So Kai, in terms of Camilla's experience of this, talking about the Proteus effect, how far is this something you consider in your work with Union?
Well, I think, in one side, I wanted to put a note too, and also I totally agree in what Camilla and Blake were saying. Also, there was this study, like this research from Roblox, I think it was, where they were mentioning also the use case that a lot of young people is doing, like testing, I don't know, new hairstyles or hair colors or even different clothing in the virtual worlds before actually wearing it or using it in the real life. So it's a way of having a little bit more of this security or self-validation or even community validation in a way, before doing some things in real life, having this security that at the end of the day the screen or the headsets can give you. Going back to our specific work, I mean, as I was saying at the beginning, we have different styles. So I think the approach for the people on one style or the other is a little bit different. We see that, especially on the realistic avatars, people tend to use it much more on, let's say, professional environments or education environments where they want to have a direct representation of themselves. We don't have yet a lot of options when it comes to the customizations of the bodies. That's something that we are releasing soon, but we don't have it ready yet. But yeah, I think like what we see is people playing around a lot with the different assets, with the different customizations that they can do so far to test everything, and then maybe apply it in real life. And then at the end of the day, it also gives you a lot of opportunities for maybe expressing yourself in ways that in real life you don't do, or you want to validate again before. So I think that's an important point.
So using it almost as a sandbox for identity, trying things on, seeing how they work in social interactions in virtual worlds.
Exactly. Yeah.
So I guess the big question in the room then is, I know I've been working a lot with my students. I teach emerging tech at Berkeley, and I know, Kai, you've been working with them as well as some of my students on identities through avatars. And I guess one of the big questions coming from my students, who are all Gen Z, is inclusion and diversity. It's a really tricky subject to talk about right now in terms of global politics, but it's something that I'm really keen to bring up because it's something we talk a lot in community about as well, how we represent in virtual worlds the diversity of human experience, the diversity of backgrounds, geographies. How much, Blake, is that something that the companies that you work with are talking about? How much is it something that you consider as someone really making the decisions in this space?
That's a great question, and I think so important, maybe even more important to some geographies than others. What really inspired me about avatar technology from the perspective of diverse and inclusive self-expression is that the avatars can help someone amplify the preferred version of themselves, or even, I like the term, iterate identity. Quickly iterate through different identities, try high stakes stuff like face tattoos. My avatars always have face tattoos because I cannot really have one, but maybe there is something inside of me that thinks this would go in line with my desired identity. But I think gimmicks like face tattoos aside, what's also really important is that it enables people to go outside of the immediate cultural context they're in, or maybe even some cultural boundaries they might encounter in their self-expression. Not every place is very tolerant to all means of self-expression, but by kind of moving that expression to the digital space, even if your local environment is not that friendly, you still get means of self-expression, and you still get to channel that identity towards that community that shows you love and acceptance. And I think this is groundbreaking in many ways. But I also think there is a certain responsibility with platforms, and they're waking up to it. And I think it's going to become an increasingly important area of technology that I'm looking at. We have a flood of synthetic content now with all the capabilities of AI. We also have synthetic influencers and avatars-based influencers. Platforms have a degree of responsibility to help users navigate that new environment. I'm not saying to regulate it or ban it, but make sure the user is well informed and they understand what they're consuming, because the potential for manipulation increases. So as avatars get better, they can look more like very radical photo representations of people. I think we're entering the next chapter of high stakes game of high value intellectual property. I think it has always rang true that in the metaverse, as a broad concept, IP is everything. And there's actually not that much original great IP in the world. A lot of it is remixes, versions of it. But now with, Camilla also mentioned those digital twins, replicas of people. Well, there is a lot of unanswered IP questions around all of this. Let's say if there is a model and she works for an agency and the agency creates the digital twin for her, but then those contracts are often written in a very tricky way and they might actually retain the right to her image. So then it's a legal battle waiting to happen, and there is some great companies building in the space around the challenges of IP control, data licensing, image licensing, using AI and blockchain, but not as kind of the front row technology. They're using that in the backend. But I believe synthetic media is not going away, and the stakes around intellectual property and basically image rights will only get higher with time, and that's a great opportunity for builders as well.
So for someone new to the space who might not have encountered the term before, synthetic media, can you give us a definition?
So synthetic media, not sure if my definition is a book-based, but maybe there isn't a book-based one. Synthetic media is essentially something that wasn't done by human hand and is usually collated from database sources or even other types of media. So any output of generative AI is synthetic media, but also a video created from AI by ground up is synthetic media, to the extent one might argue that a remix of an original content is also synthetic media, and a large percentages of social media content online is actually a redone version of content. And if it gets monetized, if the output of your generative AI, your synthetic media, gets monetized, or if that remake video gets monetized, the original creator whose creation was used as an input in that process might never get rewarded. So there are companies that's also trying to solve that problem in the world of AI, creating synthetic media rapidly, also rapidly running out of data, as well as other visual materials to train the models on and to use them in the generative process. How do you make sure that the IP rights don't get scrambled and creators still have the incentives to create?
And you see this having a direct impact right now on the conversations we're having about identity in digital spaces as well.
Yes, exactly. I truly believe it's going to be harder and harder to tell what's an original human thought that comes with an avatar, but is this avatar controlled by an AI agent? Or is this avatar actually the person they're saying? Is this a deep fake? Basically telling things, original things that originated from the physical world into the digital world, and those that were born in the digital world and might not actually be related to the physical original, but might be a digital misrepresentation. I think we're already entering that era, and that's going to be a more and more of a challenge. You know, we've seen people being impersonated on Telegram, but it's going to get to new heights with I think we've also seen those generated video footage of police cameras. So essentially, is this my avatar in that generated video? If somebody uses exactly the same avatar online, it's much easier to impersonate me than impersonate me as Blake in person. So basically, there is a bit of a Wild West edge to the technology, as always is when new technologies emerges and get adopted. But I think there is also an enormous opportunity for builders that's insanely scalable because, again, synthetic content is not going away.
Very interesting. So for you, Kai, bringing up these ideas of semi-privacy, identity, and then also talking about this idea of authenticity, of proven identity within the space. Where do you lie on this spectrum, and how are you making those decisions right now for Union?
Well, I think all this can come to, at the end of the day, like cryptographic solutions, maybe on-chain or off-chain. But at the end of the day, there are already solutions that have been built that can relate. I don't know. I think Satoshi probably is one of the most perfect cases that we can put on the table. No, he was able to sign different message, always using the same identity without revealing who he really is. So I think that's an interesting point. So probably we will see more and more solutions like this that maybe doesn't require that much of a technical skill. I don't consider it that super technical, super high technical skill to sign a message with a private key. But at the end of the day, maybe something that is more user friendly that will allow us to at least demonstrate that we are the owners of this identity without unveiling the identity. No, we had a use case like 2 years ago with some journalists that they needed like an identity that they could reuse over time to write articles, and they were looking to create an avatar too. But at the same time, they could not relate it to a real identity because they would be in danger because it was in a specific country and it could be not beneficial for them at all. No, and using public-private keys associated to the avatar, so that was a way to go forward, and that's what we did at the end of the day. So I think that's an interesting point, and we will see more visual representations of people linked to a private key or a public key in a way that the people that is in front of them, they can certificate somehow or check that they are speaking to the person who they really think that they are speaking, even without knowing who they are, no? A little bit like the zero knowledge proof and this sort of thing. So there are already technological solutions that allow you to demonstrate validations or validity of assets or messages, identities, without having to reveal the real identity behind it.
For you, Camilla, then, this question about real identity and authenticity, like how does it come in for you working and researching in this space right now? Is it important for us to have a real identity behind the avatars with whom we're interacting?
Okay, that's a great question. And the other question about diversity and inclusion was also great, because I think that the narrative that is being prevalent right now is that diversity and inclusion is an obsolete concept. And I obviously don't agree with that. I think that being authentic with your own avatar is extremely important. And there's a lot of studies that show how people, for example, people with disabilities or people with significant, like something extremely particular about the physical appearance in real life, they want to bring that in their avatars. So there was this beautiful article, I forget what magazine I found it on, but I can definitely find it. Basically, they interviewed over 1,000 people, and a lot of them had disabilities, or they were just like, they were represented as this like diversity word. And people in wheelchairs or people who are missing an arm or a leg openly said that they wanted their avatars to represent that in the virtual world too. So I think that there's different ways of looking at it. Like some people want to experience identities they're not maybe brave enough to embrace in the real world, and so they want to try to be different people in the virtual world in a safe space. And on the other side, there's people that have disabilities and have these things that they want to bring in the virtual world because they feel that they are part of their identity. Same thing with religious garment. Some people want their avatars to have that. And so I think it's a very complex conversation, because I think you have to give people the freedom to express themselves authentically, whether it means representing their identity in real life or making a completely new identity up. That freedom should exist, because in the end, yesterday someone told me this beautiful thing, and I wrote it down, and she said, we contain multitudes. And she said it in Italian, so I don't know if it makes sense in English in the same way, but like inside of ourselves, we have so many different things, so many complex like pieces that we have, and sometimes we don't really have a way to express them in real life because we feel like we could be judged, or we just don't feel safe expressing them. The whole concept around gender fluidity and like what gender represents you, I think that in a world that has no physical limitation and no attachment to your real identity and to your real self, to your past choices, to the people who know you, is really important, because anonymity can also mean that someone can finally find a way to express who they truly are without being necessarily attached to their real life identity. I think that when you're talking about transactions, when you're talking about sensitive data, maybe even like being in the workplace, you need to have some sort of way to verify the identity of that person and like make sure that that's a real person, that that's them. Even if there's like an encryption that prevents everyone from knowing their real identity, you need to make sure that that person is that person that they're saying. But at the same time, I feel like there should be a separation of virtual worlds and virtual identities. And for everything that is just self-expression and freedom, you should leave people as free as possible.
Yeah, this is fascinating. I want to return to that point that you were discussing just then about representation in virtual worlds, particularly of disability. It's something that I've had incredible conversations with a creator who founded a brand called SVD Denim, who has a showroom in Metaverse Fashion Week Plaza. So if you're listening in and you're in world with us right now, I would highly suggest that you go to the SVD Denim showroom. In there, you'll find 2 wearables that explore amputation. So SVD Denim is a Ukraine fashion brand founded after the father of the founder came back from the front lines with severe injuries. And the founder found that she wasn't able to find fashion that represented this, and actually worked with people with missing limbs, disabilities that increase the difficulty they have in terms of using fashion. So this is a new fashion brand. This is the first digital collection that they're launching to actually represent disability in a way, in a fashion brand focused on denim, that actually shows this as something that can be advocated for both in real and digital spaces. So I would urge you, if you're in world right now and you want to kind of engage in this conversation on different levels, you can now dress your avatar in some of the SVD denim creations. There are 2 in the showroom, and both are incredible, both created by the team with at Malloy and Fika Games. So really beautiful pieces. So Camilla, I'm so glad to be able to point people as well in this direction. For you then, what do you think would be your big advice for someone coming into virtual worlds right now and looking at how they use that avatar to interact with people in the space?
That's a great question. I think my big advice would be to, of course, first of all, understand what you're using your avatar for, because you do have some sort of responsibility and accountability. Like if you have an anonymous avatar, it doesn't mean that you can do whatever you want. You should not just, do hate speech or do stuff that you wouldn't do in real life, meaning there has to be some sort of ethics around it. Understanding that your digital identity doesn't mean that you should not be accountable for your actions and what you say. But probably my biggest advice is understanding neuroscience around avatars and how that can impact you as a person, your digital identity, and how you decide to create it. Like, embrace the creation process of your avatar, even of digital fashion. Like, every way that you can use to express your authentic self and bring out that authenticity that maybe you have no other way to express in real life, cherish it. Do it in a very mindful way, because it's not just a game. It's not just like something that stays there. It affects you. It affects your brain. It affects your mental health. It affects your, even like your subconscious mind. When you go in self-perception, that's like a subconscious thought of like the perception of who you are. And it can be extremely impactful on you and on your life, in your life. So my biggest advice is, don't take this lightly. Like, obviously I don't want to scare people, but I think this can be such an impactful process that a lot of us can go through. So treat it as such.
Kai, for you and this impact, do you have examples from the work that you're doing of this impact being seen in the organizations or the communities that you work with?
Well, I mean, we had a lot of conversations with clients and different institutions when it comes to all this impact. I think Camilla touched a really important point that for me is we should give the freedom of expression to the people to have this last choice on whatever, how they want to represent or how they feel more comfortable. I totally agree that some disabled people, like, people might tend to think that maybe somebody in wheelchairs prefer to have an avatar that walks. But I think that's totally wrong. I mean, at the end of the day, each one is proud to be themselves. So that's something that, just putting an example on what we were doing at the beginning, we thought that people would prefer like a stylized body instead of, I don't know, if I don't know, I'm a little bit fat on the real life, so I would prefer to have an stylized an avatar. And then at the end of the day, we saw that it was totally the opposite. No, I mean, not totally the opposite. I think there is as much opinions as people in the world, so each person is different. Each person expects one thing from their virtual or digital identity, or again, like I bring it to my field again, no, but maybe depending on the place where they are interacting, they prefer or they feel more comfortable with one avatar or the other, so they might have different avatars for different places. So I think that the important point here is just having as much options as possible, and as Camilla was saying, like using this infinity that the virtual worlds give us to go even broader than what we can do in the real life. No? So I think that's an important point. And what you were saying about the impact, directly related, like we tried to train as much as we can, especially the realistic avatars, because the other doesn't have that much data sets, but the realistic avatars with different skin colors as much as we could, because we saw that most of the solutions tend to be much more Caucasian or Caucasic. I don't know the right name in English. So we tried to offer as much options as we could. Then on the cartoon style, it's a little bit different on the data set, so that's something that we have to do a little bit more manual, but we're working on that. But yeah, that's a little bit the approach and the conversations that we had. And still, for me, it's not on the perfect point, because it really depends on the lights, and then at the end of the day, the machine can understand one thing or the other. So it's not fully fine-tuned, but I think we're going on this direction.
Blake, I'd love to bring you in here as well on that question of impact.
I think on impact, but I also would love to kind of touch on the authenticity bit, because I think something that we haven't maybe yet considered in this conversation is who gets to have an avatar. Can a company have an avatar? Can a brand have a functioning avatar? Do you need to be a physical person to actually operate an avatar? Nowadays, the next wave that's taking emerging tech by storm is AI agents. So it's a very thin line from being an AI agent of a corporation enacting its will, to actually being a corporate representation as an avatar. So to me, that poses an interesting question to authenticity, one we maybe haven't encountered in the real world. With impact, well, I think it might have a massive impact. I think in 2022 NFT boom, we have seen very interesting interplay between authenticity, anonymity, and essentially some people becoming famous as their avatars, which were then profile pictures, rather than their authentic selves, remaining undoxed. But I think there is also a huge potential for impact with luxury brands when it comes to using avatar technology. So I've been made allergic to the opportunity of how much archival content luxury brands have, but all of those notes of a designer, old designs, all of that stuff kind of sits as a dormant asset, is not being used in any way, but it's also very risky to be tinkering with it. But imagine a world in which, based on old writings of Coco Chanel, you can create a Coco Chanel avatar that's wearing the right outfits, and it's interacting with the brand community, walking them through the process of co-design, and actually building a real bridge between the past of the brand and the future of the brand, while forming community around it and bringing the community input into the design process while still within the aesthetic parameters of the brand. And I think that community angle and AI managed communities where an avatar, when there is a community organized around an avatar, good example would be Cerebro, the AI rapper, also an avatar and has quite an active community and a loyal following of listeners. I think we underappreciate that digital identity helps connect people into very niche subsets and organize them to achieve amazing things that maybe 10 years ago you would not be able to find people to work with, or you wouldn't know how to organize your work together. But now with the technology and the advances of digital identity, the community will kind of see new forefronts of innovation. And I think that's pretty exciting times and kind of times of unlimited creativity.
So avatars being this means to connect communities as well, to grow communities around an avatar itself.
Yes, and also for something that's not typically a person, like a company or a brand, to actually interact with their audience and their community as if they are a person. And I think, what personality does Coco Chanel have in this instance, right? She was known to be quite a strict lady. And also, I heard that there was some stuff with her autobiography always changing every time she tells it. Should this also be the avatar of Chanel? Who knows? There's a lot of interesting questions to answer there. How do you translate something that is not part of a human ethos into an avatar and maybe create a new form of digital representation, one that's not directly tied to an identity of a human, but still interacts with us in the digital space?
Wow, so many interesting questions here. I feel like we could go on for another hour. We only have 5 more minutes because in just a few minutes' time, we're going to be switching to the announcement of the award winners of the banners we wear, a whole competition created around these kind of concepts about self-expression through digital fashion, open to students around the world. The winners will be announced live in just a few moments' time on the runway with another amazing expert panel with members from places like Harper's Bazaar, Australia, and Instituto Marangoni in Miami. Before we do that, though, I would love to get personal with you three and ask you our final question, which is very kind of briefly, if you can give me your own self-perception. How is your avatar so far in the few years that we've all been exploring virtual worlds, creating avatars for ourselves? How has your own self-perception been influenced so far by your avatar? Blake, can I start with you on that one?
Yes, of course. I think in terms of my own self-perception being influenced by avatar, I have to consciously remind myself that I am not my avatar. And I think it also alerted me to the positive fact that we are all multidimensional people. I don't want to call it masks, but we adapt into many different facets based on the type of interaction we're having. And I think avatars help us take this concept forward. As I think Camille mentioned, or Camille's friend mentioned in the conversation, we have multitudes inside us. So I think it's important to remember that you are more than each one of your avatars, but you are also the sum of all your avatars combined. And that's how I choose to think about it myself.
So that multidimensionality for you impacts you in terms of how you see yourself.
And also remind myself that sometimes the amplified digital image is not really one-to-one Blake. Sometimes this image might be idealized, or it might have some characteristics that are overdrawn. So it's for me, it's important to just always bring it back to here and now, but then continue with the self-expression in all of its multitudes. I think that's the best way to put it.
Kai, you too. How has that self-perception changed for you through your avatar?
Well, I think for me, the important part might be that because I don't feel I can tie to any specific avatar. To be honest, I use a lot of different avatars, and I also play video games, so I use even more avatars on specific video games. I would say that for me, the important part is that you always can show your real identity behind the avatar. For me, the avatar at the end of the day is just like the visual expression that you want to show in one specific moment and one specific case. It can be based on your mood, based on the hour that it is, whatever. So I think that the identity behind it, even though it's an identity, but the real soul identity that you have behind it is the important one. So that's a little bit what I see that it's more important for me.
Camilla, how about you?
I think working with avatars and again the process of creation of my own avatar significantly impacted my self-perception in a way that I think I was always very hypercritical with myself. I have this inner voice that is like extra. I was always so hard on myself. And thinking back at like 10, 15 years ago, I feel so bad because I'm like, I didn't deserve to be that mean with myself. But I don't know, it's just like many things. And now growing up, I'm realizing it more and more. And when I discovered avatars, at the beginning, first time I was like, okay, I'm gonna make my avatar as how I want to look. And then I spent so much time like creating like the perfect avatar with the perfect like fashion and wearables. And then I looking at it, I'm like, I could easily be that, right? It's not that far from who I am. And I think that whenever you take a step back and you stop being so immersed in your ego, you start realizing that very often we're so hypercritical with such little things about ourselves. And when you zoom out and look at yourself as a human being, you're like, oh, I'm actually not that bad. Like I'm okay as a person. And so that was a big thing. And then the other one was, it trained my brain to this habit of reinventing myself every single day, which I think is so important because I think we tend to be so tied to our identity, who we were yesterday and who we were for the past 20 years. And sometimes you feel blocked because you feel, I've been that for such a long time. I don't think I can change. Just like I wake up this morning and I completely change my identity. I dress in a different way. I go with a different name. People are going to think I'm nuts. But the cool thing is that you have to understand that that's also part of the human experience. And avatars are a digital representation of humans. So we, in a way, are avatars too. And when you understand that, you realize that every single day you literally have the ability and the freedom to completely reinvent yourself if who you were yesterday does not suit you anymore. So I think it's just like, I know that this is a very philosophical like thought about avatars that might not be so immediate, but again, I tend to overthink things a lot. So that was my process. But that's also what I try to tell people, because I've seen the good and I've seen the bad in it. And I always try to push out the good because need probably more good.
Well, I think this is a fabulous place to end this conversation on. I could talk again for another hour. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk with you all, Camilla, Kai, and Blake, about your experience in this field, about your relationship with avatars, and about how they're impacting self-perception and self-expression. We're going to have to jump because we're about to enter the announcement of the Banners We Wear winners. We're jumping on a second stream this evening, and then we're going to be jumping into the launch party for Metaverse Fashion Week 2025. Just a huge thank you to you all three for participating today. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you for a great conversation.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.